to the Lisa at the Edge podcast. So good to have you.
It's really good to be here after all this time chatting and setting it up. It's good to finally get it sorted.
Yes, absolutely. I think we met on Twitter in our shared frustration.
No, it was a rant. It was a rant.
I was trying to be polite. But our rant, okay, let's call it what it was. Our rant around the Azure Stack HCI naming. That was our problem, wasn't it? And since then, we've been good Twitter friends. And I am super pleased to have you. So on today's episode, I'd like you to talk us through your career path. So you are a Microsoft MVP, an MCT, and a director of your own training and services company. So I'd like you to share with us how you got into tech, because I know you didn't have a traditionally tech start, shall we say. So we'll go through that. And then also, can we please talk a little bit about Azure training and certifications? How have they changed? What are the value in having certifications, both for individuals or companies looking for them? And then let's talk a little bit about best practices for studying and sitting exams. I know that will come in handy to me soon. So let's do that. So
it sounds like a good plan.
Yes, awesome. Okay.
Let's see if we stick to it.
Well, yes, that's the other thing. Okay, you introduce yourself because you'll do it better than me. You tell us about you.
My name's Ed. I'm my current role. I run my own company, and since last February, I've been sat in this desk at this chair training just about every single week globally. Prior to that week, it was a regular Sunday evening on a plane, go and teach for a week, come back Friday, appease the family Saturday, fly Sunday, etc., and keep going that way. So I'm probably one of the very few who the last 6, 7, 8 months has been positive in terms of family life and positive in terms of work, even if I've missed out on meeting people in the classroom. And it's a very different thing, teaching in the classroom from teaching online.
Yeah.
But my history, you're right, I'm not a traditional techie. So my first ever job at the age of 17 was as a printer operator at Land Rover, working on IBMs with punch cards and all sorts of strange things. That was just a gap before college. When I left college, I then did the very next best thing, which was join the police. So I joined the police for 13 years, spent about 5 or 6 years of that time involved in technology, involved in projects internally. Excuse me. And I finished up on a national project for incident rooms. So when there are murders or missing people or major events, they run these incident rooms, and they're helped by computers. And it's got a wonderful acronym of HOLMES, HOLMES, Home Office Large Major Inquiry System. And I was on the project to go from HOLMES to HOLMES 2. And that was back in 1997, I started that. And in 1998, I realized I enjoyed the techie far more than I enjoyed anything else. There was a change, getting slightly political. There was a change of government in 97, which changed the police service from somewhere I wanted to be to somewhere perhaps I wanted it to be less. And I was headhunted by Computer Associates as a project manager. Did a year with them. Then I went to BMC as a services manager, and then moved through, having expected to spend 30 years as a policeman. I then spent the next 4 years doing 4 different jobs, which was just strange to me. Ended up doing something pretty cool. I was vice president of a professional services organization, and then for various reasons, I ended up going self-employed, and did self-employment as a technician, trainer, project manager, whatever anybody would want in the technical area. And it was fun. I enjoyed it. Working for yourself, once you've taken the leap, it's a really big leap to go from a guaranteed 30-year career into something different. Once you've made the leap once, making it again just becomes easier and easier each time, because you can do this stuff. You've got it in you. No matter how much imposter syndrome you've got, you still know you can do certain things. And then I went to various phases of this little business I'd started up, and I hired an apprentice. I got a good contract and I hired an apprentice, and he was great. The training he was getting was absolutely shocking. It was appalling. So I decided, well, I'm going to fix that. So I became a trainer and a teacher, and I qualified as a teacher, and I went to work for a very large apprenticeship training company. And my day was walking into a classroom with 16 to 19-year-olds, telling them why they needed to wear a suit and why they needed to do business things. And I haven't worn a suit since. I probably never will wear a suit again. And but that's what you do in business.
Yeah.
And we taught them some really good things. By this time, I was already major hooked on Microsoft technologies and getting involved and communicating with a lot of people in Microsoft about various things, going to loads and loads of events. I'd also, the transition from police out into IT was all based on an Open University degree, which I did when I was in the police. And with 3 young kids and a police career, that was an interesting 6 years, but it was worthwhile. And if I recommend that to anybody who's got not much time but really wants to keep studying, it's a really good way of doing it. I became a lecturer with them as well, and then somebody who I'd been working with from outside Microsoft decided they were leaving the UK and going to America, and they said, "Why don't you apply for the job?" No, I'll never be good enough for Microsoft. That's ridiculous. And I was moving house and lots of things were changing. And so I didn't. And about 3 months later, I went back to another one of their events and they went, "You didn't apply. We haven't found anybody." So I applied and I got the job. And so in 13, 14, I went to work for Microsoft as a technical evangelist, which was brilliant. It was standing up, talking, telling people about wonderful things, telling them the art of the possible, what they can do, how they can do it, and just helping people with tech. So it's effectively my hobby for work.
Yeah.
And I did that for about 2 or 3 years. Then, as with Microsoft does now, and probably Dell does as well, every 12 months there's something different and there's a different thrust and things move and things change, sometimes for the good, often for the organization, for the very good, for the individuals, sometimes not so good. And I worked in a department where there were sort of 80 people, probably 50 of them were developers. And I'm not a developer. I last wrote code, I think in 1996 on Visual Basic 6. So it was a really long time ago. And that was just to make people hate me even more. That was it for the West Midlands Police speed camera system. I wrote the software for the first introduction of that. It went on for about, 6 years. And so I decided I didn't want to be a developer. They were changing everything, and I had 2 places to go: be a developer or be something different, or not be in Microsoft. So I thought, well, I love what I do. I'll just carry on doing what I do for myself again. So, and I haven't looked back. Since then, I've been busier. Have to say, probably busier because when I left, they made me an MVP for enterprise mobility. So my bread and butter is Azure Active Directory, Microsoft Intune, also Endpoint Manager Intune, advanced Azure Information Protection, Cloud App Security, all the ancillary security and identity bits that go with it.
Yeah.
And I've been training, teaching that ever since. I do a lot of, I write my own courses. I help Microsoft write some courses. So I did one of the Azure architecture courses in the early days. I do a lot of exam writing, which I can't really talk too much about, but my passion for certification is trying to get it as close to real world as possible. Because when you've sat hundreds, and I have sat hundreds of exams, and you see a question and you think, yeah, I know the answer to that, but what relevance is that to anything anybody's ever going to do in their job? It sort of reduces the value in my mind of what the exam's for. Yeah. Which is why having performance-based testing is such a good idea, where you actually have to go and do something, as long as it's something you would normally do. Yeah. Instead of, look, a little nook and cranny under that application, we're just going to ask you that question that you don't really need to ever know. And that puts me where I am now. So I now mix my days between trying to get as fit and healthy as I can so I don't catch COVID and suffer from it, because I'm in that, I'm 55, I'm in that age where if I was as heavy as I was 6 months ago, I'd be risky. So I'm doing lots of fitness and lots of training, teaching, bit of consulting, writing. So this week I'm doing evening work, working in Seattle time on helping to revise the role of enterprise administrator for Microsoft 365. So it's doing a job task analysis saying, what does this person we have created do? Which tasks does he do? Why does he do them? Where does it fit? And from that, they go and amend the courses and amend the exams.
Yeah.
So it's great fun. It's just better than walking the street at 4 o'clock in the morning, getting wet, punched, spat, and kicked on, which is what we used to do. So anything's better.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's such an interesting story, because there were so many points there that you could have went so many. So like you joined the police, you were expecting to be in the police for 30 years, then that changed. You'd been involved with some technical projects, so then you had project management and services experience. Then you came across, because you went self-employed, so you proved to yourself you could do that. But during that, you took on an apprentice, and it was that experience with the apprentice that made you realize the training these guys are getting. I was about to swear, and I'm not sure if I'm allowed to do that on these yet, so I won't. But the training that they were getting was inadequate, was
suboptimal.
Yeah. And then that's really like, that is almost stumbling across on that opportunity. But I think also it shows the value of trying different things.
Oh, yes.
And almost just trusting yourself and the opportunities that present themselves, and trying to get the most out of whatever comes your way.
I feel like I'm very, very lucky in that everything I've tried, I've enjoyed, apart from two things.
Mm-hmm.
And those two things, one lasted too long. So I joined the National Health Service as a project manager 16 years ago.
Yep.
To build a dental hospital. I thought, hey, let's use project management. Oh my. The Health Service is an absolutely wonderful organization clinically. I'm saying nothing else.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
So I ended up very, very unhappy, very overweight, very just not enjoying life. And I said, no, it's got to stop. So I jumped out of that basket and went to work for another organization, an organization of quantity surveyors, actually. And I was a management consultant. And they promised lots of things. And I went on one engagement. And when that engagement finished, they said, right, we're going to do it. I said, no, that's not what we agreed. And they went, oh, but that's what you're doing. I said, no, there's my notice. That's we had an agreement that I'm lucky in that I'm able to say I'm only going to do what I enjoy doing, because I know the effect on me it has if you do something that's not enjoyable.
That's such another really great point. So you spoke there about being in a role where it impacted on your health and your fitness, etc. And I think that's so important to point out. I think sometimes people maybe miss the correlation between, if they're not enjoying a role, or a role is becoming too stressful, or work is really draining them and it's not giving them anything back, how that can impact on other areas of their life.
It's 80% of your life. It's
Yeah.
Most of your life is at work.
Yeah.
Why do something that harms your time outside of work? I mean, without talking about money, I went from self-employed, earning a really good way. Well, I was running my own company. I was building my own contracts, and I effectively stopped that to go and work as an apprentice trainer on less than I was earning in the police a few years earlier. Yeah. It's money's nice, money's good. Yeah. I'm lucky in that I haven't got a huge mortgage. I don't have to earn X. Yeah. I just look at what I need and say, am I enjoying what I'm doing? Can I live on it relatively comfortably? And I'm lucky because I do. Yeah. I keep saying I'm lucky, but I've made sure that I'm in that place by doing what I've done to get there. Yeah. And now I'm just showing off every day, talking about computer stuff that I enjoy. Yeah. And ranting about names in Microsoft technology that keep changing. Don't get me started on Defender either. Dear, oh dear.
That's such a brilliant point as well, about the fact that you with the apprentice, you've seen an opportunity in training, you knew that you'd really enjoy that, you took a wage cut to do that, but you know, in time, that's got you to where you are now,
Absolutely.
doing everything that you've
It
done.
also sent me back to 2 more years of night school to get a postgraduate teaching qualification.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Which I would never ever have thought of doing. I couldn't do it now because I don't have a normal schedule, and I can't say every Wednesday I'm doing that because most of my courses are 5 days. But when you're training in a classroom for 5 days, you know that every Wednesday evening you're at college.
Yeah.
And so that's part of my, hashtag never stop learning.
Mm-hmm.
I was a terrible school kid. I was really lucky. My mum went to work so I could go to a public school.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to a school locally, and I was brilliant on the sports pitch. The end. I was not a good student. As soon as I left school, when I went to college, because it was something I chose to do, that's it. It sort of clicked, and I just said, no, I want to learn. I want to learn this. Not, what does this triangle do?
Being forced to learn, or
And it's the sort of thing where eventually everybody clicks. I suppose that's a little bit of why I wanted to help apprentices, where everybody's now being pushed into university.
Yeah.
People would come to me and say, well, I finished the apprenticeship, I want to go to university. And I say, well, I'll give you a reference, but I think it's the worst thing you could possibly do. I've just sat in a classroom with you for 20 weeks.
Yeah.
I know what you're like. I've had to push you every single day to get this bit of work done. You're going to sit in a bar for 3 years and you're not, unless you grow very quickly, you're not going to get out of it, and you're going to have a huge debt. But I'll give you a reference because I think you've got the intelligence to do it. I just don't think, will help you very much.
Do you know what? This is so strange. So this is my second episode recording since my break. It's the second discussion I've had on apprenticeships. Absolutely not even planned. And you know what? I said it on the previous episode, but I'm going to say it again, is that when so first of all, my high school experience was honestly like surviving the Hunger Games, to be brutally honest. I have blocked out much of my high school experience. Let's just say I had a pretty awful one. But at the same time, I'm extremely proud of how I did survive and how I am most definitely flourishing. But then I went to university, and I went to do law, which is something I loved and I did want to do, but I did spend a lot of time in bars. You're correct. And it was funny. It wasn't until the end of my diploma, at the end of my degree, when you do the diploma, which is much more practical in terms of legal. So you're solving problems, you're speaking to clients, that I absolutely nailed, because that was real life application. That's what I wanted to do. And then I went to work for Thales in their business graduate scheme. And at that time, they had apprenticeships for their sort of software engineers and systems engineers, but they were only just bringing in the apprentice for like the business grad scheme as well. And I just thought that was such a good idea. I think that university shouldn't be the only route into these kind of things. I think it's unnecessary. I think the more you can open these opportunities up to different people, the more you get the diversity that we all know that we need. And I think apprenticeships are a great way to go. And I've seen those sort of opening up and getting bigger over the years.
The biggest problem with apprenticeships was the way they were funded and how large organizations took advantage of that.
Yeah.
They were taking government money and running on 80% profit. And that's just not acceptable to me.
No.
Which was part of another reason why I stopped doing that for that organization. But the current funding, I'm not up to speed with it. The current funding is different, and there's an apprenticeship levy on organizations that, you're paying for it. You might as well hire people and use it.
Yeah.
And I know my wife's organization, she works for a local company. They hire apprentices every single year, and they thrive on them and they love them. They think they're great. You've got this youthful energy and this desire to show that they can do it just because they weren't academically brilliant. And some of them are academically brilliant. They've just chosen not to go to the higher education level.
Yeah. That's like when I did my degree, I really, really struggled in first and second year because it was so academic. And I I had to work at it. It did not come easy to me at all. And I really, really struggled to find my feet in first and second year. It wasn't until third and fourth year when I kind of grasped what they were looking for in terms of essays. And it was really about, you know, making a point and then reasoning it around it rather than trying to get everything right. It was about your ability to explain. And that's kind of when I took off. But I honestly think that I would have done better doing some kind of apprenticeship type experience as well. I think when you can, like you say, when you can be like when it's practical and reflective of real life. I mean, talking of high school, I really, really struggled with maths, right? So when I was younger, when I was in primary school, I was far behind in my times tables. And when I got up to high school, I was even more behind, and I really struggled. And in Scotland, so it was like in my fourth year, I still managed to get like a credit. So I managed to get, I think, a 2. I think like the top ones are 1 and 2. And then I took higher maths because everyone else was taking higher maths, and that was the thing to do, right? So I took higher maths, and I really struggled. I potentially wasn't the best kid. I definitely wasn't the worst, that's for sure. But I really struggled, and I would often ask, like, what value does this bring to me? Like, how am I going to use it in real life? Because I couldn't picture how I was going to use it, I just really couldn't get it. So my maths teacher, bless her, Mrs. Smith, she was actually one of the best teachers. She turned around to me one day and she said, Lisa, you'll never get anywhere without higher maths. So I said, challenge accepted, and walked out and dropped higher maths. Now, that's not big, that's not clever. If any young children at any point watch this, it's not a clever idea, right? It's not big and it's not clever. But that's the kind of kid I was. And so then I dropped out and didn't do higher maths. But it was that lack of context of explaining this to how this is going to benefit me in life that I really didn't enjoy.
I've often thought about going back and doing more maths purely to see why I didn't understand it when I was younger.
Yes.
So I know enough maths to get by. I know enough maths to do what I do every day. You know, I did really well at accounting, so I can run my business and do all that sort of stuff. But I did a term of additional maths. So I did in the fourth year, I did my O level, and everybody moves on to additional maths. And so I did. And I think I got my name right in the mock. And they went, perhaps you're better for statistics. So I did statistics the next year or the next term and the term after. But it's one of the things I've not gone back and revisited, that I'm thinking, you know, as I draw down on the career, thinking, right, I'm always going to study something. It's just I've got to study, so I've got to learn something new.
Yeah.
Perhaps I ought to go back and do maths.
I've had a few people, so over the years, I've had to say I've applied for jobs and they've had like psychometric tests, or you know, they do tests like that. And I've really, really struggled with them, because when anybody asks me to do anything to do with maths, I just freeze. I get a brain freeze. Like, I just have the fear. And I've had a few people over the years who have taken the time to sit with me and teach me how to answer those questions. And it's amazing. When they sit and teach me, I get it. Now, it goes out my head very quickly, but I know if I was to sit and actually work on that, I 110% would be able to do it. But it's the different kind of teaching. I had a maths teacher at one point who was terrible. Actually, like, so bad. So he would teach something the same way over and over. I'd explain that I didn't understand, and if he could ask for help, and he would tell me exactly the same way. So I used to sit next to this really clever boy in maths, and he would then, so the teacher would teach, we'd get to work, I'd basically ask him, and he would then teach me, but then I would get into trouble for speaking. So then I would get sent out of the class. But literally the only way I got through, and that was that credit time in year 4, the only way I got through was by that boy helping to explain it to me, because I did not get the way the teacher was explaining it to me. So it just goes to show how important teaching is, and also about being able to relate it to real life. And I suppose as well, that brings us on to certifications, because I'm not going to lie, I have come across people who have sat certain certifications for Azure, and I've known that they don't have a clue what they're talking about. Now, this was maybe a couple of years ago. And I know that they've been updated a lot since then. And they've also brought in role-based sort of certifications. So in terms of technical training and certifications over the years, do you think they have improved?
It's a jolly good question. The certifications prove your ability to answer those questions at that time based on the exam you sit, not on your ability to use a product or perform a duty. However, let's talk about my first ever certification was NT4. And I was just bringing up my transcript to find out what date I took that. And I took that in March 1998. And I was still in the police then. And I'd said to them, well, we're using all this stuff. I haven't got a clue what it does or how it does it. I need to learn. So they sent me on a course, and there happened to be an exam after it. And the word you were probably going to use, I absolutely wet myself when I sat this exam. At the end of the exam, you've answered all the questions. These two bars cross the screen with pass score and your score, and you were just praying that your score carried on after the pass score stopped.
Right.
They don't do that anymore. It just pops up congratulations or no. But
oh yeah, that's much better than sort of that suspense. I can't deal with that.
And I was quite hooked on this. I did that one. I did a couple of other courses when I was in the police because the company we were working with paid for them effectively because the police wouldn't. And for me, it's a really good gauge of what I know about the product. It doesn't prove to me, to anybody else at that time, how good or bad I am. It just says I've got some knowledge.
Yeah.
Sadly, in those days, that could just as easily have meant I'd cheated. There are still sites you can go to where exam questions are there, current exam questions. However, without giving away any secrets, you can now write questions that befuddle those because things change each time they show up, and you end up with because all you're doing by cheating is reading something on a page, learning what it is, learning the order. When you see the question, you think, oh, yeah, click. And you'll find that actually gives you a wrong answer now because things have changed slightly. But using these brain dump technologies it doesn't prove anything to anybody. And
is that like mock exams, or is that like something?
No. So they're marketed as practice tests, but what they actually are people in certain countries go and sit an exam and take pictures of the questions and then regurgitate them and the answers on a PDF for somebody.
Oh, okay.
There are a number of limitations and restrictions on people taking tests in countries they don't live in.
Okay.
For that very reason. So rumor has it that you'd go and sit on a course, you'd go on these boot camp courses, you'd arrive, they'd send you to the beach, and each 4 days somebody who was a trainer would take the exam and then hand you your certificates, that sort of thing. That can't happen anymore because everything's got photographs and you have to see passports and all that sort of stuff. But
yeah,
that's 20, 30 years ago. Now it's a lot different because the exams are updated so regularly. So if we move at the role-based exams, if you look at the Azure exam, I wrote a course for Azure. Probably I'd left Microsoft, so it was after 2016, which was the 535 course. It was the Azure Architect course, and I wrote it with 2 or 3 good friends. And since then, there have been 3 changes so sufficient, so large that it changes the title of the course and the title of the exam.
Yeah.
So it used to be the 535. They then went on to the Architect, which you needed to pass 2 exams for. They've then changed in this last 3-4 months to 2 new courses and 2 new exams. So things are changing very often. It means that the poor people writing the exams have to refresh them every month, every 2 months, every 3 months, and take things out that are no longer valid.
Yeah.
As an example, Ignite, let's just change all the Defender titles. There could be 50 questions in 2 exams about that. Every one of those has to be completely rewritten. Every single one. Because search and replace might not work.
Yeah.
You have to go through, and there might be 300 or 400 questions in an exam bank. You've got to go through every question and see if it appears as a right answer, a wrong answer, or in the text. It's a major, major job to keep exams up to date, and they are spending a fortune on doing that. They're spending a fortune on making sure they're all secure and they're done well. We can now take them online. So I was just trying to work out how many I've taken online. I've taken, well, I'm looking at a full page of 20 or 30 online, and that started in about 2015, 16. And I would not go to an exam centre to take an exam again.
No.
I just find it so much easier. There's none near me. It's an entire day.
Yeah.
Now I can just, so if we finish this and I've got an urge, I'll take an exam. I could log on, have a look. I could take one at 2 o'clock. I go into the bedroom over there. I sit on the bed, take some pictures of the room. How much more relaxed can you be than sat in your bed taking an exam on a laptop?
You've just given me a brilliant idea, actually, because I'll be taking my exam online.
Yep.
And obviously in this room, I've got my laptop and my 2 screens, and there's various books, and there's like a lot of stuff around.
Never take it there. Take it somewhere.
My laptop.
Pick a laptop. As long as you've got a webcam and a microphone and a mobile phone, you're absolutely fine. And I literally sit on the bed.
Yeah.
The difficulty is I talk to myself sometimes. You can't do that. I touch my face sometimes. I count on my hands. They will keep telling you off. If you do it too often, they'll kill the exam.
Right, okay.
And you can't go out of the camera. You can't have a drink. You can't go and have a wee or anything. But you can't do that in the test centre. Well, you can ask to go out, but that's the one drawback. But it's a much friendlier system to me. And now they've introduced performance-based tests where you take a few questions, click a button, and a lab appears and it says, same sort of question, you need to achieve this. And that's all it says. You then go and achieve it. At the end of the exam, when all those tasks are calculated, they'll be added into the score. There were teething problems. There were quite a lot of teething problems. And there are still some issues where it means that you don't always get the exam result straight away, because currently you get it immediately. If there was a query or a problem with the marking, it might need somebody to do something to it, and you might get the result in the morning. Yeah. But I think they're still suspended, because they suspended all those when the entire world went online in March.
Yeah.
So I think those are out. But to answer the real question, my life as a trainer revolves around having to have a certification to be able to teach a course to help people, even if they're not going to take the exam. Yes. So I have to take lots and lots of exams. So if I look at my exam history, this year, I think I've taken... I didn't get that. Sorry, Siri. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've taken 9 exams since May.
Wow.
And that's not because I like exams. I really, really don't like exams. The first exam I was suboptimal, because I never fail. You just pass or you're suboptimal, because it's always a learning experience. I happened to be about 100 miles from home at a place I was an instructor, and I was taking an exam I wasn't an instructor then, I was taking a course. And I'd missed it by so, and I was riding my motorbike as an ex-police biker, and I probably didn't obey many road laws or speed laws on the way home. I was just, now it's an occupational hazard and I'm learning something from it, and I know I can do it again, but it's just, I know it's frustrating when you're not successful. But I have techniques I use. Most of my exams at the moment are beta exams, because they'll release an exam. As a trainer, I get a discount because I've spent the money to be a trainer, so they give you a discount, and sometimes you get free codes for betas if they're short of people to take the betas. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 of my last 9 exams have been beta exams. You don't get the result for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks.
Yeah.
And you get the rough with the smooth. So you get questions that might not be in the real exam because they might not be sufficiently good. You might find, I know I took an exam at Ignite in 2018, which was a solutions architect exam. And the balance of that exam for me was wrong. I got 100, I think I have 60 questions. I had about 35 developer questions. I didn't get any of those because I'm not a developer. I'm useless at that. But that's the penalty you pay if you want to be early and take the exams. The benefit is that as soon as you've passed it, you can teach it straight away.
Okay.
As a student, Are certifications worth it? So some organizations require them, some don't. I'm very happy to help people take courses and help them understand the product. And I give them support for 6 to 12 months afterwards. And I create OneDrives with extra documentation in and extra help, and put my OneNotes in there to help them pass the exam if they want to. That's just the way I study. But if they don't want to do an exam, that means nothing to me. So if you're working for an organization, they just want you to have the skills, and certification isn't something they're asking you to do, and it's not something that floats your boat, there's no need to do it. But if it's something that you think you want to prove to be able to move on to another employer, or you want to prove it to yourself, or your employer is requiring it, then it does have great value. And they are now much more robust than they used to be. They're getting to the stage now where the vast majority of questions, I think, are absolutely relevant to real world. Not all of them, but the vast majority of them. And especially with performance-based testing, it brings it into the realm of proving you can do it rather than knowing you can tick a right box.
Yes.
No matter how lucky you are with tick boxes or drag and drops, there is an element of chance. When you're doing it in a performance-based test, you actually have to know what it is you want to do, how to do it, and how to prove you can do it.
So the performance-based tests, are they mini labs?
They're live machines running in Azure, which appear on the left side of the screen. The right side of the screen will be your instructions that says, here's a question, we want you to do this. You then have access to the portal or the Cloud Shell or any of those areas and say, right, and you can do it. If you're a Bash geek, you can do it all in Bash. It doesn't matter. If you're a PowerShell geek, you can do it in PowerShell. If you use the portal, you can do it in the portal. So certain things in Azure can only be done either in Bash or the portal or in PowerShell. So some of those questions, you don't have the opportunity to choose how you do it. But if you are more comfortable with the command line, you can do those tasks in the command line if it's possible and you know how. So it makes it more comfortable because the portal changes so often. Oh, so often, which is good and bad. I mean, this cloud world, I used to pride myself on a Sunday night. I would have all of Monday's demos ready. I'd walk in, I'd blast them with brilliant demos, and you'd load the Azure portal. And I remember on this one occasion I did that, and they moved from, you used to have dashboards, and it went to the Azure Home portal, which is completely different. I just went, oh, okay. Bear with me a minute. I've got to find what's going on here. And they sometimes do that with no warning at all. But it's really good as a student because you know then that this is what you're going to face when you are working with it in the real world. You're going to come to it on a Monday morning and go, okay, I need to use my initiative and go and find where to do that.
Yeah, I've seen.
So training is much more real now.
Yeah, I've seen that happen numerous times on either courses I've been on or people who are just about to demo something and the portal has changed. And I think it adds a bit of reality. So when people say cloud changes all the time, clouds is so fast, it's never, everyone must, I honestly still think some people are like, can't be. And these are like really perfect examples of how, no, it literally is being updated all the freaking time.
There are frustrations in that as well, because change all the time is good because it means you're developing and you're getting better things and you can roll it back. But
yeah, if it's making things better.
One of the things that frustrates me is I know Microsoft for years and years and years and years had this wonderful style guide for on-premises products. A bullet point looks like this, a box looks like this, a dialog box looks like this. Everybody did everything the same. I don't know how many product teams work in Azure, but if you were to create a storage account, just before you click go, at the bottom, it might say automation options, which would take you to the template. If you were to create a virtual machine, it'll say download a template.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many different ways of navigating on different products that the product team is, oh, this is brilliant, we'll use this. And nobody else uses it. So you go to that particular part of the product and go, that doesn't work for me. And I know it's really hard for them because they're all doing different things and some products work in other ways. But as a user, the user interface is quite frustrating, which is why I'm a real I wouldn't say, I'm definitely not a guru, but I'm a geek for PowerShell. I've loved PowerShell since it first came out. But now my first port of call is go to the Cloud Shell, run the Bash portal and start using Bash, because The commands are very simple. They're very effective. You can do most things in bash that you want to do. And if I'm ever going to do anything more than once, why would I do it in the portal? Why wouldn't I do it in a template, or do it in a PowerShell script, or do it in bash?
Yeah.
So I tend to do that, and I would never have believed I'd be using bash commands. I mean, I've even got Windows subsystem for Linux on my Windows machine now with Ubuntu running in here, just so I can run those sort of things.
As a non-techie, so as someone who hasn't used PowerShell or anything like that, I obviously love the portal because it looks nice, but also to someone like me who hasn't had that background, it's a really good visual of the steps that you work through and how you build stuff up. So it's actually a really nice way to understand what people are doing when they use the likes of PowerShell, etc., what stages they're moving through, what dependencies have on each other, and how it all links together. I really like that perspective. But that said, I've seen people use PowerShell, for instance, to create VM templates and to do all kinds of stuff. And I think it's so cool.
Automation's wonderful.
I've always
been
so
magic, isn't it? I'm just going to make that happen. I'm going to make that happen.
So impressed.
The good thing with the portal, and I moaned about them calling it different things, is almost every resource you create, before you actually create it, you can look at the template that is going to create it.
Yeah.
So you can actually download that and share it with people and look at it, and then you can read through it and understand, once you understand this wonderful magical construct called JSON, JavaScript object notation. Once you understand that, you can see what's being built and how it's building it. I'm quite excited. I don't get excited very often, but quite excited about a new language Microsoft are bringing out called Bicep.
Oh, I've heard about this.
And Bicep is to help them with their ARM templates. It's like,
this is hilarious. So I heard about this and I thought about, one, the gym, so actual biceps, but two, there's a DJ called Bicep. So I was like, what's going on here? So, okay, it's a new language with art, right?
So it helps you. Basically, it's a simpler version of ARM that translates what you write into a complex, detailed ARM template.
Right.
That the resource manager relies on. It's not in production. It's an experimental language at the moment. And I've fallen foul of things like that, thrown my all behind a couple of things, even to customers that have them do them and then have them disappear and not come into real use. So I'm having that on a watching brief rather than getting really excited about it. But it looks quite good. It looks as if it's something that would make, for people like you and me who really aren't going to spend their entire life in a 2,000 line ARM template, understanding how to build simple resources in a simple way.
Yeah, that sounds very cool. Very cool.
Which has got us off certification brilliantly, isn't it?
That's good, don't worry.
So I didn't really answer the question. How valuable are certifications?
I think that
some people incredibly valuable. I couldn't do my job without certifications. Some other people couldn't do their job. I mean, I've taken, I don't know, must be close on 200 Microsoft exams now. Probably got 60 or 70 current certifications. I don't use them all the time.
Yeah.
But it got me to the level where I could teach it. So I could go and teach Microsoft 365, most of the courses, Azure, anything that isn't developer, tomorrow without prepping, because prepping is not worthwhile anymore because the system's changed. But I know the courses, I know the content, and I'm able to teach them.
Yep.
I'm certified in Windows Server. I used to have a contract with Microsoft as Server Guy UK, and I haven't taught that for over 18 months. I've not taught a server course for 18 months, and I've got one coming up in December. I've got some bespoke courses I've got to look at and write in December. And I need to find myself a week to rerun it and think, hey, what do I need to talk about servers and hyper-converged infrastructure and software-defined networking and all that stuff. So it doesn't mean you know everything, and it doesn't mean you can rely on that. And Microsoft have just announced that they're about to announce, which sounds wonderful, that they are finally going to come along and talk about recertifying.
Ah,
it's not
okay, yeah.
publicly announced yet. I'm not sure whether it's announced just to trainers or whether it's been announced publicly. But very soon they're going to be talking to people about, because when they went role-based, they said your exams will expire, your certifications will expire after 2 years, and you'll have to recertify.
Yeah.
And we've not found out how, why, or what yet.
The process is, for that.
But it's going to be good. I know about it. I know what's happening with it, and it's going to be good. And
I think that's really good.
Trumpish. I apologize for that. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
And it's happening, and it's time.
So. Much more sense. And I think that you did answer the question, because I think really, how valuable are certifications? What do they actually mean? I think they are valuable depending on your role and yourself and what you're looking to achieve. But also it's about understanding what those certifications mean. Like you say, it tests your knowledge. With the new performance-based tests, it definitely will test more than just your ability to pass an exam. And as they become more real life based as well, they will more accurately reflect your capability potentially in a certain role. So that's really good. But I think it's just important to remember that they're not the be all and end all. Like, you could do the course, you could get the learning and the experience to help you in whatever role that you're doing, and you don't necessarily need to do the certification. But at the end of the day, I mean, they do seem to be quite big in terms of putting them on your LinkedIn, on your CV when you're applying for a job, etc.
All the badges you get now, and but they have changed dramatically. So I remember back in 97, 98, they were pretty much all multiple choice.
Yeah.
And I know the VMware exam I took a few years ago was all multiple choice.
Yeah.
There are lots and lots of different types of questions now in lots of different ways. The one I do miss is, I think the second exam I took was on TCP/IP. It was internetworking, which is a joy to teach apprentices. It really wasn't. But it was called an adaptive exam. And they start off and they've got maybe 5 topics to ask you about. And they start on topic 1, give you an easy question. If you get it right, they give you a slightly harder question. If you get it right, they give you a slightly harder question. And then they move on to topic 2. If you keep getting them wrong, it asks you a question of the same difficulty until it says, you really don't know what you're doing here. It doesn't say that, but it moves on to the next topic.
Right.
And so instead of taking 50 or 60 questions, I walked in there and I didn't know it was an adaptive exam. I just answered the questions. And I had 13 questions. And it stopped. I went, I've broken it. What's going on here?
Yeah.
And it said, you passed. And I suppose to a degree, you feel a little bit cheated in that you've only been asked 12 or 13 questions, but it must have meant I got most of those right in each area. But the stress was no less. I didn't know it was adaptive, so it wasn't one of those where I'm thinking, because if I'd known it was adaptive and it kept asking me questions on the same topic, I'm thinking, well, I'm getting these wrong, aren't I?
Yeah.
There's pros and cons to that type of exam. I don't know why they don't use those, but the science and the technology behind the writing of the questions, the managing of the process, having been involved in it, it's extremely robust. It really, really is. And there are more statistics on who takes what, with that obviously anonymized, how long it takes them, all that sort of stuff. That means it's really, really well monitored and managed.
Yeah.
Anything that doesn't look right or anything that's not working gets removed immediately.
Yeah.
And still, after all that, you still get typos. Things still come through.
Yeah, yeah.
Like knocking the S off premises.
Is that a typo, or to someone? Do you know what?
That's almost as annoying as renaming Windows Server to Azure Stack HCI.
Well, on that topic, since that is the topic that brought us together, Ed, I think we can now see with the new Azure Stack HCI OS that it does now make sense. Would you agree?
I would agree that now you have a version of it you can only get through Azure, and it connects to Azure, and it does. But on the product itself, it's got nothing to do with Azure Stack. It's still Windows Server running hyperconverged infrastructure. Azure Stack is the Azure software, the Azure interface, the Azure portals, and everything else running. That's Azure Stack Hub.
But the new version isn't Windows Server OS. It's its own OS. Azure Stack HCI is a new operating system.
And what's it look like?
but but it is a new.
There is more reason for them calling it that now, I will grant you, and I'll wind my neck in over that.
It's a new operating system, and what they say is it is focused on it being on a hyper-converged infrastructure, which is connected to Azure, rather than Windows Server, which is everything Windows Server is.
Yes.
It's a whole, maybe not a wholly new operating system, but it is a new operating system separate from Windows Server that you will consume.
You can only get through an Azure subscription.
You'll consume through an Azure subscription, and it will run on your hyper-converged infrastructure, which you will, of course, buy from Dell, because where else would you buy it from? I don't know if I should say that I work for Dell, there are other OEMs.
It's the WSSD page still up, the Windows Server software defined page still up, with all those 7 or 8 or 9 partners that do all that stuff.
So there is a page for the new Azure Stack HCI OS in terms of the OEMs. It's a lot more OEMs than, for instance, Azure Stack Hub has.
Yes, there it is.
I think Microsoft did say that they were going to basically get rid of the program that is now. So basically the reference architecture for Windows Server. But I mean, I can't see that happening. I think we should wait and see what happens in terms of feedback and uptake and what customers need to use, etc. And Dell will continue to offer this version. I don't know if I meant to say that or not, but it's out there now.
Well, it's about 25 or 28 on the page.
There's a lot. When it comes to the Azure Stack HCI or the WSSD, there's a lot of OEMs to choose from. Whereas for Hub, for example, there's only a few.
Yeah.
So ourselves.
That's a major enterprise expense, that, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. So there's a few, and it's a lot maybe more complicated. Engineering wise, co-engineering with Microsoft.
It's turnkey, isn't it? You don't have to touch your own hardware effectively.
Yeah. It's
the portals and nothing else.
Yep. So I think we can now agree that Azure Stack HCI.
Okay, Lisa, we can agree.
Makes sense. Also, just for my sanity, I just have to accept it, and we have to move on, and we need to figure it out. Actually, the podcast that I just recorded, so by the time this one goes out, actually, people will know it was with Thomas Maurer, and we spoke about Azure Arc, and I was talking about what this Azure Arc and then the services underneath. So Azure Arc for enabled servers, Azure Arc enabled data services, Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes, and he was like, yeah, and there's kind of 2 more, and then he mentioned, and then he was going to say Azure Stack HCI, because basically Azure Arc is built into the new Azure Stack HCI to enable it, right? But I was like, nope, don't even remotely bring that under Azure Arc, even if it does have a bit of Azure Arc in it. I was like, can we just leave that alone in the Azure Stack portfolio before I have a meltdown? Because people are already just getting to grips with the new Azure Stack portfolio, the new Azure Stack HCI OS, very early days, but Hub, Azure Stack HCI, and Edge. Lovely. That's the hybrid portfolio. And now everyone's like, Azure Arc.
The renamed Databox Edge, that one.
Yes. So that's now Azure Stack Edge. So that's lovely.
And that makes sense to me, because it takes containers and processes from Azure and puts them on a device and runs them on that device, which is part of Azure, which you're paying for through Azure. That's great.
And it is a first party, so you get it from Microsoft as well, and it's consumption based. So I was like, please leave Azure Stack portfolio alone, Hub, HCI, Edge, hybrid infrastructure portfolio, and then Azure Arc. Whether Azure Arc is involved in Azure Stack HCI or not, just leave it there, and then tell me about Azure Arc and the services underneath that, and how that helps you manage your services. So brings Azure management and governance to your workloads wherever they are, or as well Azure services. And then we had a great chat about multi-cloud and what that means.
You do realise we've got until March till it's all changed, because there's another Ignite in March.
Yeah, is the other Ignite not in February?
They told us March. They haven't come up with a new date yet, unless you've got an internal date you're about to break to the world.
No, No, I'm probably just wrong. Although I think maybe what's been confusing me, have you seen that everyone from Microsoft has been posting the little submarine in their tweets that says February 2021?
Yeah.
And that had me thinking
February
that
instead of red October. Yeah.
I had me thinking, I was like, oh well, Ignite's in the February, so maybe it's to do with that.
It could be. I still don't know what the blue submarine is, and nobody's told me.
I don't know what the submarine is either.
So we're outside that internal joke.
Yeah. I haven't even to be fair, I've not actually asked anyone. I've just seen it pop up loads on Twitter.
You had Thomas on, and Thomas popped it up. You should have asked him.
I know. I think it started to happen, or I was noticing it more after that episode, but yeah. But yes, there is another Ignite. 2 Ignites, that's brand new, isn't it?
I can be a bit controversial, really, because I'm really lucky in that I've been talking at Tech Eds and Ignites for years and years and years. And in fact, the only time I didn't was when I worked for Microsoft, because the UK wouldn't pay to send me out there to talk. Even though I was invited, but they wouldn't. But ever since I've done that, and I know we have to have them, but online events like that just don't work for me.
No,
they just don't work. If I'm not taken out of my environment, where I can wholly concentrate on that environment, then it doesn't really work for me. And it's not the sessions, it's that, so I probably attend, other than the sessions I speak at, the only ones I ever really used to see were the ones I presented. Because the rest of the time you end up working on stands. So I used to work on the Worldwide Learning stand and the Intune or Endpoint Manager stand, meeting customers, meeting Microsoft people, getting to meet the people that you talk to on Twitter all the time, or and it was the conference and the conference atmosphere that was as worthwhile as the sessions, because the sessions, it's no great knowledge. Yeah, they're all on YouTube.
Yeah.
You can watch those at your leisure on the plane on the way home. You can do whatever you like. Now you go and support people, you know. So Techie Lass used to go to hers, watch her in front of 3,500 people in that. That was the speaker room. Before that was a nervous room, but it was brilliantly done. So I don't think it's brilliant that Microsoft have put it on. They've put masses and masses of money, effort and work into it. And they're doing absolutely the best anybody could ever be expected to do. But really, I am looking forward to the time we can do some form of travel again. And
and are you looking forward to getting back in the classroom?
Yes, I treat this as a classroom. I've got so we use I exclusively use a lab company called Go Deploy Labs, which allows me to shadow people. So I can take control of their systems and do what I would do in the classroom. So that works.
That's cool.
I can, depending on which technology I'm using, Teams, I'll soon be able to drop one into a breakout room to help them personally as well. So that will make it much less important. But yes, it's really quite nice to, you know, if I'm teaching in Oslo's a fantastic city. It's nice to get into the classroom. It's nice to do stuff, but I don't get the chance to do the exercise I'm doing now. I'm now
a different work-life balance.
I'm 38 pounds less, so nearly 20 kilograms, 18 kilograms less than I was in July, purely because, and when you, it's like conferences, when you travel, the discipline is so hard to keep up, you know. Sit in an airport lounge, are you going to drink, are you going to eat? You're going to do both.
Are you going to drink and eat?
You're going to do both.
Do you know what, Ed? Like, listening to you and all your exercise, and I've seen quite a few people on Twitter doing some pretty. I am the complete opposite. Like, I am around about a stone, maybe more. I'm not going to say overweight, because then everyone's going to say you're not overweight, blah blah blah. But I am
more than you are comfortable with being.
But way more than I'm comfortable with being. So, and also I know that it's not because I've been in the gym lifting heavy, working out. It's been because I've been sitting on my couch watching Netflix, eating all of the takeaways, supporting local businesses, let's call it. And it's strange. I had a little bit in the summer where I was like doing all my walks. I was getting 10K steps before 9, and you know, the weather was lovely. And then I describe this whole journey through COVID as it is a total roller coaster. I have been very much like, whoosh, let's start a podcast, super productive, all this great stuff. And then like a little bit down and then I'd be up again and all that kind of stuff. And for the last few months, honestly, I've just not, but I'm getting to that point where, like you just said, I'm not comfortable. Like I know I'm not healthy.
It's a mental switch for me. So I've always had a roller coaster with weight, a real roller coaster. And it's almost not the weight you are, it's you stand in front of a mirror and go, that's enough. That's the point. You've got to start feeling comfortable with yourself. So much so that, and I do become a bit obsessive about stuff. My wife will say extremely obsessive about stuff, but so at the moment I tend to teach to Scandinavian time. So if I start teaching them at 8:30 their time, it's 7:30 my time, which means if I want to get an hour's exercise in or go for a run, I'm up at 5:30.
Right.
So I'm up 5:30 running, make breakfast for my wife. She goes to work. I then have a shower, get ready, done, bang. And I'm sitting in the class at 7:10, 7:15, ready to prep. And as I've had a military past, that's not too difficult to do, even though I'm old now. It's something I've always thought about and always done. But it does wear on you after a while.
Yeah. And do you know what?
When you're doing 8 hours in the classroom and you're doing 5:30 to...
I'm the same. I'm like all or nothing. So I think because I don't have in my head like a big goal, or I don't have a plan where I think I'm going to do 5 days in the gym and I'm going to do, this is going to be my program, then I'd rather just do 0 and eat all the biscuits. Yes. I'm very all or nothing. And I've been talking about this now for the last 2 years since I did my bodybuilding competition. I'm still trying to find that balance, that wonderful word.
Bodybuilding competition.
Yeah. I think, do you know what? If we start talking about that, Ed, this podcast is going to go on forever.
That's for another time, because
I did a bodybuilding
wimp in a gym.
I did a bodybuilding competition back in 2018. Competed in London, came 4th or 5th. 4th out of 10 girls.
That takes some dedication. That does.
Yes, I dieted for 6 months, and before that, I built muscle for about 9. That was one of the craziest experiences ever. Do you know what? It's really insightful in that it teaches you what hunger feels like, and we are quite lucky in this world that, well, most of us, not everyone, unfortunately, doesn't need to know what hunger feels like. And I'm not going to lie, when you experience that, you understand why certain people do certain things.
Oh, my weight got to such a degree that I did a regime called Lighter Life, which is sort of keto, right? But it's 500 calories a day.
Yeah.
And I'm a 2,400 calorie bloke.
Yeah.
So for the first week, you feel like you've got flu because you've been eating bread and cakes. You've got carb withdrawal.
Yeah.
Then you try and go for a walk, and after 5 minutes, you realize there's no energy in there. You actually can't do that. So for 6 weeks, you get used to this routine.
Yeah.
And I lost, the first time I did that, I lost 6.5, 7 stone. That was at the end of the NHS when I was depressed and fat and heavy. And then I started running, and I've been running and exercising ever since. And whenever I injure myself, it just goes, because you carry on eating and you can't exercise. Yeah. So you sort out the relationship with food for me first, and then I'm happy with doing the other stuff. But no, it's very much no longer letting work change how my life runs.
Yeah.
I'm lucky enough to be that far down. So I'm not on this trajectory anymore. I'm definitely working down this way.
Right.
And so in a few years' time, I'll be doing much less work and more not work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Right, Ed. Well, that has been
our list. I think we've exhausted our list.
Oh, we've more than covered our list. Our list was covered about 25 minutes ago. I mean, I said I was going to try and keep these a little bit tighter to the time that they were.
Your editor's going to earn his money or her money.
Sorry?
Your editor is going to earn their money.
Yes. Which is why I need to think about getting a machine of my own. But yeah, I always said that I was going to try and keep these a little bit tighter once I was bringing them to YouTube, but I enjoy these discussions and I do this for me. a lot more than, you know, if I can share that with other people, that's brilliant. Like, for instance, I love to share other people's stories about how they got into tech. I think it's so important to show that, like, it's okay to make changes in your career, and,
Yeah.
you know, just share all the different venues that you can get into.
I agonized for, so the job I got offered when I left the police was double the money with no shifts and no being stabbed and punched. And I still agonized for a week. I said, can I have a week to think about it? And I went, really? I went, yeah. And it took me a week of thinking, A, because I loved the job,
Yeah.
but B, because I was guaranteed, if I didn't do anything criminal, for 30 years and a brilliant pension.
Yes.
And then I started thinking, well, you're giving up. You're thinking about your pension. You're 26. How old was I? 30 years old.
Yeah.
Do something that really tests you. Anyway, another day for that one. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful fun.
Thank you for joining me, Ed. And I'm sure we'll speak again soon.
Yes, indeed.
See you later.
Bye-bye.